he said that he felt like a failure and he can't seem to make me happy. And so his only solution was to ask for a divorce. And he said, the sooner the better. He said it for me. I didn't have to be the one to say it. It was over. We were done trying. I can't, I don't have the energy to hope anymore. It's just too hard.
Warning, listening to this podcast is going to make your marriage irresistible. Whether you're exhausted from carrying everything and just want him to step up and be a real partner, or you're lonely and aching to feel close again and adored, that's totally fixable. I'm Laura Doyle, New York Times bestselling author and creator of the 6 Intimacy Skills. For 25 years, I've had a front row seat watching women go from burnt out and disconnected to having the passionate, easy marriage they always wanted. Love is learnable. The secrets are real, and this is where I teach them. So glad you're here. Stay with us to the end for your Try It Tonight takeaway. Kathleen, welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast. I'm so excited you're here.
Hey, Laura, glad to be here.
All right. Well, let's start from the beginning. How did you meet and fall in love with your husband? Like, how did you know he was the one?
Well, we met in the Stone Age a long time ago in theater. We were both acting in a musical together, and it was super fun. And he was really flirty and fun and super confident. And he had just gotten out of the Marine Corps, so he was really strong and really fit, and he was a great dancer. And I just felt very feminine around him. And we dated for about 2 weeks, and I started beginning to see a lot of kind of macho, ego-driven behavior that I didn't really like. And so after 2 weeks of dating, I broke up with him because I told him that I thought our values didn't align. But he scaled the wall of my apartment building and broke into my apartment just to put flowers on my bed. And, and I gave him a second chance. So I began to see his softer side and how kind and helpful and patient he was with his mother, particularly. And my mom always told me that you need to pay attention to how your boyfriend treats his mother, because that's how he's going to treat his wife. And he was just so sweet with her. And he was very loyal and very hardworking. But most of all, he constantly stood by me through all my crazy moods and ups and downs. He was just a really steady presence in my life. And I really never felt so accepted and so able to show all my light and my shadow and still be loved. So that was the key.
Oh, it sounds so romantic and sweet.
Oh.
And I could hear the tenderness of seeing how he treated his mom and finding that so attractive. I really get it. I love that. So you guys decided to get married at some point?
Yeah, we went to premarital counseling because the pastor that we chose to marry us required it. And we weren't affiliated with any church at the time, but we went to his classes, and he had us take this personality test, and he found out that we were very different. But we figured that's no big deal because opposites attract, right? And so we just, wrote it off as not applying to us in any way. There's nothing we need to fix here. And we also, he and I, my husband-to-be at the time, and I had a lot of disagreements about God. And my husband didn't really see a place for God in our lives, and it bothered me. And, these were just like little red flags that I sort of pushed aside. But as time went by, it created doubt, and it created a spouse-fulfilling prophecy that was kind of damaging later. But I do credit the pastor for one sage piece of advice that he gave us, and that was never threaten or tease about divorce. And so we never did, and until we did. So he always
Foreshadowing.
said, don't mention it as a possibility. So we never ever said those words.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like that. And so what was your spouse fulfilling prophecy at that time? Like, we're too different, or what would you say it was?
That I was going to have to set God aside in my life if I wanted to marry this man, that God couldn't be a priority in my life because it would cause too much conflict. And also that, yeah, we were really different. And I still kind of hung on to that idea of, our values not aligning, but I just kept pushing it aside. But it would creep up throughout all of our years. It would creep up when we have problems and disagreements. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of a little jingle playing in your head, like that commercial you keep hearing. Like our values aren't aligned. We're too different. Sounds like.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah,
right?
and so it kept coming up, and there was great times, but then it would come up, and I would think, "Oh, man, maybe I made a wrong choice somewhere along the way." But we got married and we moved to Seattle and we were working in the theater and it was really exciting and fun. And his goal at that time was to become an actor and he'd always dreamed of being an actor ever since he was a boy. And I was just doing it for fun. And so when we started getting involved, I chose to do stage management or props. And I just didn't want to compete with him. In my mind, I thought it would be better for our new marriage if I just sort of took a back seat. And I didn't perform for years. And that was something that kind of was always there for me too. Like I gave that up. After about 8 years of not having kids and living this kind of theatrical lifestyle, we wanted a more traditional life, and then we decided to get real jobs and have kids and buy a house and those sorts of things, and I really wanted to stay home with our kids when they were young, and so I asked for that, and I really didn't realize how much pressure it put on my husband to be the sole breadwinner, but he really wanted to make me happy, so he just put his nose to the grindstone, and he produced. He got good jobs and he supported us. And
Mm.
at that time, it was a real leap of faith for me to become completely financially dependent on him because I had always had a job. And I began to wonder what my value was without a job because I felt really sort of isolated from the world being at home with these two kids and, just being around other moms and stuff. And at that time, my kids weren't even in school yet. So that social connection wasn't even made. And so, to kind of prove myself and compensate for staying home, I took care of everything having to do with the house and the kids, and they became my domain. And I saw myself as the decider in chief on all things in this category. So, like the children's education, their activities, their friendships, the schedule, the house maintenance, upgrades, meals, TV time, family vacations. I just took it all on. And I volunteered in the classroom and the community, and I said yes to everyone who needed something done. And I sort of prided myself as this go to girl, the organizer. And it gave me a feeling of purpose and meaning, but it was exhausting me, super exhausting. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds tiring. It sounds very tiring just hearing about it. So, yeah. And so, and how did that impact your marriage?
Well, I just I really became large and in charge, as I call myself. And, for example, like holidays were really important to me. And it was always my job to create the magic. And I think a lot of moms feel that that's their job too, to create these magical moments for their families. And so I would fill the calendar with pumpkin carvings and Easter egg hunts and Christmas traditions and community events. And I would make custom birthday cakes for all the kids and plan all the family vacations. And this is what a good mom does, right? That's what I thought anyway. And so what happened to the dynamic there is that I was in charge and he was my worker bee. And I basically made all the decisions around these events, and I really didn't consider what he wanted. He was just there to execute my plan and not to question me in any way. And so when I would enlist my husband's help on the weekends to fulfill all the obligations that I had made, he would resist, go along, and then resent me. It was like wash,
Mhm.
rinse, repeat. That was our little dance. Always resisting first, then he'd go along, and then the resentment would come.
Yeah.
And the whole family was overloaded with commitments, and none of us had any downtime. I mean, the kids were just stacked with all these activities, and in my skewed view, a full schedule meant a productive life, and a productive life meant meaning. And that whole superwoman myth was just perpetuated there. And we were all overwhelmed and crabby, and there was really no rest in sight for us. And of course, from the outside, we looked like the family that had it all together and did everything in the community. And, it just looked really good. And that was really important to me at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and I think this is very common. Like, yeah, there was lots to do and you were productive, and that's a meaningful life because everybody was dyeing those Easter eggs and carving those pumpkins and doing having the magical holidays. And so and it's just interesting to hear you talk about it now. And I know this is some years back. What do you think when you look back at that time? Like, what would you, I'm going to ask you this at the end about something else, but as a mom, like, what would you say to your mom self from when your kids were that age?
Mhm.
Like, how would you be different now, knowing what you know?
Well, I do. I wish I could do it all over again because I would just be so much more chill and I would just let them have more downtime and just play in the backyard and just, be in nature and just not have so much scheduled time. I mean, these kids, they both achieved and I would set the bar and they would reach it and then I'd set the bar higher again and they would reach it. And they were just like striving to please mom. And, I even feel like in some ways that could have been interpreted by them and maybe was as, really conditional love and rather than just hanging out and loving them. So yeah, I think I would back off on like 50% of the commitments that we made probably. And it
Okay.
also I didn't really appreciate the stress that my husband was under at the time too. And to cope, he began drinking. And I was really unforgiving when he came home drunk. And he would come home and he'd slur his words and he'd get really full of himself. And after a while, I didn't trust him to be responsible with the kids, even if he was sober. And I began micromanaging him and telling him how things should be done. And I became really hyper vigilant and critical, checking his breath, looking into his eyes to see if he'd been drinking. And more than once, I found myself trying to control the whole family harmony when he came home from work and he had been drinking. I was immediately just like on alert. And although I wanted like to have family dinners together, there were times when he'd sit down at the table and he would just like hold court about his vast knowledge and opinions on things. And he wouldn't ask the kids what they thought or how their day was or how my day was. He would just go on and on about what he wanted to talk about. So I'd find myself in this manipulation sort of mode where I was trying to guide the conversation to include them and say, honey, tell your dad about how you did this and that at school today. And, just trying to manipulate the situation. It was just really forced and awkward. And it
Ugh,
was it was really not a good time. So I would
sounds
end up
stressful. Yeah.
whisking the kids away. I would try to separate them from him. As soon as they were done eating, I'd get them off to baths and homework and bedtime and stories and then I would go off and do my thing in a separate room and he would go and watch TV and we would just lead these little separate lives so we wouldn't have to risk any kind of a conflict or any kind of embarrassment. And I was really lonely at the time.
Yeah, it sounds lonely. Yeah, and just the stress, and that's so relatable, trying to have the conversation be about the kids telling dad about their day or whatever, and instead, yeah, it sounds like he felt like he needed to be heard, and, yeah, it sounds rough and lonely. I get it. Yeah, it's hard, and,
Yeah. And Laura, I wanted to tell you that, although the drinking wasn't every day, it was just enough of a presence in our lives to create this element of unpredictability. And so I didn't feel emotionally safe. It triggered my need to control and made me fearful of like a potential conflict. And I felt I couldn't trust that my husband would, carry through on what he said he was going to do, or I felt like he wasn't being honest with me. He began to lie about some things about his drinking or gambling or money or his whereabouts even. And his mood was unpredictable at the time and it volatile and he could be really angry and resentful, or he could be really mischievous and inappropriate in social settings. And I was always on edge wondering like, how is he going to show up and how am I going to manage that? And my view of him began to dim and he knew it and he started avoiding me as much as possible.
Well, it does sound scary and unpredictable. It sounds like you felt like you had to be pretty vigilant. And there was like an embarrassment factor there, I hear, that I can relate to too. Like feeling like you don't want to lose status because of these, you're saying mischievous comments, but it sounds like there was, yeah, there are times you just thought he was really inappropriate and it made you feel unsafe. It sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, he was also a real storyteller and a bit of an exaggerator, and he still is. And but I wasn't always sure of the truth or the fiction of his stories, and so I would question the facts of his stories, and sometimes I would question him in front of other people. Like I would say, it was $100, not $500, or wasn't it 2 hours and not 6 hours? I would interrupt his story, and he would act like he knew everything, and he would get really defensive if I questioned his abilities. And I would try the nice approach and say, it's okay to ask for help if you don't know how to fix something, honey. There are people who can help you. Try to be helpful. And then I would use the critical shrew approach and say something like, just because you were born a man doesn't mean that you're naturally endowed with all the knowledge of finance, construction, and remodeling. So from soup to nuts, I would question his thinking, especially when it came to projects. And for example, there was one day that he was building a deck on our house, and I felt that he really didn't think through what he was doing, and he really didn't have the skills that he acted like he had. And so I questioned him the whole time he was working on it. Are you sure? That doesn't sound right to me. I read something somewhere that, and I just hounded him through the project, through the entire project. And I ended up getting my way, which is what happens when I hound him enough, which has reinforced me hounding him. And it, even though I got my way and the deck turned out the way I wanted to, I really lost a lot of intimacy, and there were a lot of fights along that whole way. Yeah.
Wow. You're so accountable in the retelling of this story, but it sounds like at the time that was all you had for getting the deck to be the way you wanted it. Like that was all you knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely wish I would have known better. And I felt like I was actually pretty smart too. And I would do my research, and like in the topic of like, you're a real smarty too, and I remember back in the days listening to some of your stories about how you had such great ideas. And I always had such great ideas I wanted to share. And, I really pressured him a lot. And I remember one time I was looking into, tax tax deferred college savings plans for the kids. And I just thought it was a great idea. And I was researching all day, and he came home, and I just immediately started launching into this whole, you know, diatribe of why we should do this and how we should invest in this. And it's the greatest idea. And his immediate response was no, just no. And 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 we actually had a running thing about how he always says no first, and later he'll think about it and then maybe say yes. So I kind of expected a no, but I didn't have the patience to wait for him to think about it or do his own research. I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and convincing him until he finally was worn down and he went along with it. But the thing is, Laura, is that he agrees years later that it was a great idea and that we probably wouldn't have put that money aside if I hadn't pushed him. And so it's just that my approach was so bossy and off-putting. He just didn't want to hear it. But that really bothers me too. The whole idea that, I'm a smart, outspoken woman, and I hate the idea that I had to constantly tiptoe around his ego to get agreement on anything. It's like I should be able to be who I am and say what I want and say the things that come out of my mouth the way they come out, and he should respond to my intent, not my words or my tone. And I really resented having to wait for the right moment or to phrase it in a non-threatening way or to make it seem like his idea. And all of this seemed very pandering to me. And I told him that if he would just set his ego aside, then he would see what a good idea it was and he wouldn't fight me so much. This is what was going on in my head at the time. So it was really like a point of contention for me.
Yeah. No, I totally get it because you're smart and your opinion counts and you have these great ideas like tax deferred savings, or whatever. So it is frustrating. It's I think, at that time too, I think there was certainly this push of like, about equality and marriage and things like that, it kind of almost felt like a social responsibility that we have these ideas and say them to our husband and not have to stroke his ego. I mean, I felt like that was kind of part of the whole time too. So, yeah, I totally understand the frustration. So yeah. So what happened?
Well, I just continued on my merry way with that. And, I had another bright idea about a class that we could take to get out of debt because we started to get into some debt. And he just didn't want to hear about it. He dug in his heels saying that he's got it handled and he would not read a book. He would not listen to a radio show or even talk about it. And so finally, I just signed us up for the class and he went and he just crossed his arms the whole time and just hated it. But you know what? It's like the class ended up laying this foundation for our financial philosophy going forward. And we have a secure retirement, a debt-free lifestyle, and it was all because it started with this class. So it just gives me more evidence that my ideas are good. And if I just keep pushing, he will see things my way and it'll all be better for our family. And I just didn't realize my approach was the problem and all the intimacy that was lost along the way.
Oh, I get it though. Like, especially you get more confidence. Like, you can look back and go, see, I was right. This got us a secure financial situation that we're in now. So, yeah. So, but all the while, it sounds like the intimacy was getting chipped away.
It was. And, through the years, I struggled with my weight and my body image. And I would try a lot of new eating plans and I change our whole family's food life and I clear out all the junk food out of the cabinet and forbid anyone from bringing a bag of potato chips in the house. And so I would lose the weight and then I would gain it all back and I would blame it on them, my whole family, and thinking that, if they would just appreciate eating like I did, then they could be healthier and I could stay on my plan. And I felt superior to them. And I would think to myself, look at me losing weight and caring about myself while you all are just getting fatter and fatter. And, I didn't realize at the time how this behavior really affected my daughter, who now she's 32 years old. She struggles with her body image today. And I really regret the impact that that had on her.
Oh,
And so
gosh,
that's one of the unintended consequences of being selfish. Yeah.
selfish. Well,
Yeah.
does it? Okay. Well, you're incredibly accountable. I love and I appreciate your accountability, and it actually sounds really tender to look back at how you. That is something I just always admire when parents look back and say, "I wish I would have done this part differently," and especially
Mhm.
say it to their kids. And it kind of sound. I'm kind of guessing that you probably have, but anyway, yeah, nobody's a perfect mother, that's for sure. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Well, the
and I can so relate to this thing about like feeling superior about my food and trying to lose weight all the time too. We might be the same person, Kathleen. So, yeah. So what happened then?
Well, a lot of what I was doing in my marriage with my husband and with my kids too was making helpful suggestions, and they were always met with resistance. With my husband, always, and with my kids, more so when they became teenagers. And I would ask him to try new, healthier recipes with me or do some exercises or walk with me. And he would just reject any invitation. Or if he did go along, he was like hurrying through it and not really wanting to be there and in a different place. And so it just wasn't worth it to have him with me. And if I found a book or a podcast that I thought would help him, or a new tool he could use, or a better system for organizing the garage, or a stretch that would help his tight hips, they would all be rejected. And of course, I was consuming every self help course and podcast and marriage book that I could get my hands on. And I hadn't found you yet, but I was just really trying to find ways of fixing our marriage because I knew things just weren't right. And he wasn't interested in hearing any of my epiphanies. And he just didn't understand I was trying to make our lives better. And, at the time, I did think about leaving, but as a child of divorce, I didn't want my children's lives to be upended. And I wanted to have them to have the stability that I never had. And so I never mentioned the word divorce to my husband, even during some of our biggest fights. We never threw that around, thanks to our premarital counselor many years earlier. But, it was hard. Yeah.
Yeah, it does sound hard. It sounds lonely. It sounds
Mhm.
disconnected, and it's so exhausting to be the person that's always trying. and not feeling like you're being met. There's nobody else pulling their side of things up.
Yeah, and I really wanted to feel safe bringing up subjects that might be prickly, hoping that he would receive them with understanding and kindness. But so many subjects were off the table. And our conversations became only about logistics and a very narrow list of safe subjects. And we really stopped connecting on a feeling level about anything, and our sex life was really lackluster. And I really craved being pursued, and he would often stay up late, and we didn't go to bed at the same time. And so I began pursuing him, and he would turn me down, and he would say he was tired or he wasn't into it. And I began to feel really rejected and alone, and we would go months without PI. And I, of course, made no secret of my disappointment. And so I helpfully began suggesting that he see a doctor, that he get testosterone, that he lose weight. I told him all the ways that alcohol consumption affects sex drive and ED, but he would never do anything about it. And so the dry spells lengthened. I didn't at the time realize how disrespectful that was and how hurtful that was. But I was
Yeah.
experiencing no emotional or physical intimacy, and I was feeling so lonely and unheard and unloved. And my body was holding so much stress and inflammation. I was overweight, and my hips were aching all the time. I was moving around like an 80-year-old woman, and I was exhausted every night. And I was also
Huh.
struggling in my job. I was really unhappy at my work too. I was having a lot of the same kinds of things. People just weren't getting me, and it was really frustrating. Yeah.
It sounds frustrating. Yeah, and painful, very
Mhm.
painful. And I just remember how bad it feels to be rejected by your own husband for physical intimacy when, we all know that's very important to men. So like how hard can it be to seduce your own husband? But yeah, it was
Yeah.
really painful. I remember being turned down. Yeah. So yeah, so what happened?
Well, after the kids left home, I was in about my mid-50s, and I quit my job and I began this spiritual journey, becoming a yoga and meditation teacher. And I joined a spiritual community with very Eastern beliefs. And it was sort of threatening to my husband, especially because of his philosophy about God and him not really having a connection with God in his life. And this was like not mainstream in any way. And so he was kind of like, what's going on here? Is she joining some sort of a cult or what's happening? But he did support me quitting my job, and he did encourage me to find relief from the stress that I was feeling. And he felt like the meditation and yoga was, doing some things that were positive for me. And I did feel better for a while. But soon I really began to notice this chasm between our belief systems, and that old conversation from when we were dating came up again. Our values don't align. And thoughts of him never being the right man for me came up, and I believed that I should have listened to my intuition all those years ago, and I never should have abandoned God and married this man because we were never meant to be. And these tracks were running in my head. And I'm like,
Huh.
how could it work with him at the golf course and me at the ashram? And of course, I felt emotionally superior to him too. Is like, look at me, I'm becoming enlightened while he's rejecting the influence of God in his life. And this is not what I wanted. And at that point, we were so close to retirement, and I couldn't envision more years of sacrificing my values to be with him.
I
We,
could
we
so
tried
relate
marriage
to
counseling too.
feeling
We,
superior.
yeah, yeah, can you? Yeah, I was really judging him for him not getting on board with doing things my way, thinking the way I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very lonely, very lonely. I remember. Wow. So, and was there a moment when you just thought, like, we really cannot go on like this?
Yeah, and we tried marriage counseling for about 6 months, and it didn't seem to make any difference. And the counselor actually seemed pretty beaten down by his own marriage. He was basically suggesting that a man needs to keep his head down and go along to get along. It was just it wasn't really what I was hoping for. And we treaded water for years, living these parallel lives, me in a constant state of should I stay or should I go, sitting on the fence. And I kept trying to make connections with him, but I was just going about it all wrong. And he was drinking and he was angry most of the time. And there was really no emotional safety. And I really stayed because I was afraid of the unknown. I was afraid to be broke. I was afraid to be alone. And I didn't want him to hate me. And I feared it would really break him if I left. But what really kind of was the final straw, I guess, was that one day we were visiting some friends out of town, and he got super drunk, and he humiliated me when we went out to dinner. And the next morning on our drive home, I just tore into him for being a terrible person, a terrible lover, terrible husband and father. And I just poured out all the resentments and frustration that I had been holding back for years. It was our worst fight ever. And it was a stupid time to have a fight because our drive was 8 hours long. So the fight, which lasted about 20 minutes at the beginning of the drive, left us sitting in silence for the remaining, 7 hours of the drive. But the weight of the pain in my chest as I stared out the window, just holding back those tears, feeling so hopeless, it was just unbearable. And yeah, it was really hard. And so a few days later, he came home and he said that he felt like a failure and he can't seem to make me happy. And so his only solution was to ask for a divorce. And he said, the sooner the better. I
Oh
never
my.
thought I'd hear those words from either one of us. I never thought I'd hear the words, but I hate to say it, Laura, but it was really a relief
Yeah.
because he
Understandable.
said it
Yeah.
for me. He said it for me. I didn't have to be the one to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, everything was going to blow up, but at least you'd be in a different situation than you were in. And it was intolerable. It was painful, the situation you were in. So I can imagine the relief. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also kind of terrifying a bit.
Oh yeah, it was scary. All right. Yeah, I moved out and I lived with friends for a little while and in this little tiny trailer with my dog, and no Wi-Fi. And we met with an attorney and we separated our assets and we filed for divorce like soon. But it was surreal and so sad to throw a lifetime of memories of partnership away after 36 years. I mean, we were like together since we were young, but neither of us knew how to fix it. We just didn't know how, and we were both so unhappy. And so then I informed my family and my kids, and the kids took it really poorly. I mean, my son just cried and cried. And they were adults, but they were still really attached to us. And when I told my sister about it, she said, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea you guys were in that bad of a situation. If I would have known that, I would have recommended this book to you called The Empowered Wife." And I told her to forget about me reading another book. It was over. We were done trying. It was like it was time to heal and move on. I just couldn't try anymore. I just was so tired. And she kept on. And I told her that I can't, I don't have the energy to hope anymore. It's just too hard. And I told her to stop. And I even threatened to block her because she kept texting me and saying, "Are you sure? And here's the link and you should check it out." And I just said, "Stop." I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't take it all in. It was just too much. Yeah,
You're already exhausted.
I
Totally
was.
get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. And kind of annoying, actually, too, because your sister's somebody that could have maybe supported you. You probably needed some support. But instead, you're like having to block her because she's pushing this book on you. So that's
Mhm.
frustrating, too.
Yeah, I just felt like I had read so many books and I had listened to so many things and I've taken all these courses and all these self-help things and it just like never seemed to make any difference. And it was just like, I just don't want to get all invested in something that's going to just disappoint me. And nothing seemed to work.
Yeah.
So I walked away from that, and she respected it. And I moved to Mexico. We owned a little house in Mexico. And so I moved there. And about 8 months went by, and my nervous system calmed down. I got some rest and I got some sunshine, and I began to see a path forward for my life on my own as, a single person. But I couldn't help but wonder, like, where did I go wrong? And I felt like I did everything. And if only he would quit drinking, if only he had a more open mind, if only he got help, then life would have been okay, because he was the problem, right? Not me. I did not see it. But I decided to buy your audiobook, and I listened to it while I walked. And I was walking the beach one day, and I just stopped dead in my tracks as I heard the story after story about the critical, controlling wife. And it was like, oh my God, this is me. And I felt so convicted and so responsible. It was me. And all my superiority and my blame and my pride just transformed into deep humility and shame. Oh my gosh.
A weekend away, a weekend to laugh, a weekend for self-care and discovery. If you can't remember the last time you did something just for you, this is the sign. I'm hosting Adored Wife Weekend in Anaheim, California, this October 9th through the 11th. 3 days of practicing the 6 intimacy skills in person, surrounded by women who get it. There's an 80s dance party, a live man panel where you can ask real men anything, and the kind of nourishment that fills you back up in ways you didn't know you were empty. Previous events sold out, so save $250 with early bird pricing through June 12th. Go to adoredwifeweekend.com. I'll save you a seat.
The poor man, he was only trying to cope with all the demands I put on him, and he was always only trying to make me happy and to be my hero. He was loyal and he was true, but he was just helpless to withstand all the disrespect and the feelings of failure that he faced in this marriage every day.
What a moment. That's incredible that you
Yeah.
like became so accountable. Like in 1 second, it sounds like just something opened up in you.
Yeah. I didn't see it. I don't know why I didn't see it.
No, me
But
neither.
I desperately, at the time, wanted to make things right, to try these skills and to see if we can turn things around. And I didn't know if he would be willing. I just didn't know it. We weren't divorced yet. There was still time, I felt like. And so we spoke on the phone. And in that phone conversation, I shared some gratitudes and I hear yous. And we talked mostly about logistics, about like the divorce and things. And I responded with whatever you think. He had some decisions that he needed to make, and I was just, whatever you think. And he could tell that something was different. And he asked me if I really wanted this divorce. In that first conversation after finding this book, I hadn't even read the whole book yet. And so we agreed to just slow down the timeline and just see how it goes. So we kind of called our attorneys and put the brakes on, just said, we're just going to hold off on next steps. Let's just kind of pause. And so we continued our phone calls, and I used the skills where I could. And I returned to Seattle, but I rented a house from a friend. I wasn't ready to move back in with him. It was like, we just got to take it really slow. And so I'm living in this house owned by this friend of mine, and I was there by myself, and I immediately got really bad COVID. And he came over and he fed me, and he brought me water, and he brought me medicine, and he basically took care of me.
Oh, so sweet.
So it was sweet. And he just assumed his role. And we decided to begin seeing each other like once or twice a week, just dating kind of. And we took things really slow, and I continued using the skills, and I used a Laura Doyle apology. And he was really receptive to that. And he was relieved that I could finally accept some responsibility and accountability, because it was always his fault. It was always about his ego or his drinking or his inability to do things my way. It was always him and not ever me. I was the clean one in my mind at the time. But this was really showing some accountability, and he really appreciated that. And at this time, it was really important to me also not to compromise who I wanted to be going forward. And I really wanted to take responsibility for how I show up. It was really important that I didn't want to fall into that old powerless way of being. Well, what do you think, honey? Well, what do you think we should do? And, well, I think, and it was just, I really wanted to be clear on my desires. So I kept my self-care a priority, which included my spiritual practices. And I was doing art and I was singing and I was experimenting with a lot of creative things. So I was really committed to that. And we still lived separately, but we dated throughout the summer. And we took a trip together at the end of the summer to see these same friends that he humiliated me in front of before our big, gigantic fight. And he was sober. And it was an amazing trip. And I was on my paper and I was using the skills. And, during that trip, the love really began to emerge again. And it just so happened it was over our anniversary. And we went out to a really nice dinner. And Laura, the PI, was smoking hot during that trip. Yeah, yeah, it was. It was like, wow. It's
Oh
like,
my
did you
God.
or what happened? It was really amazing. So we still weren't back together again. I mean, living together. And I even moved back to Mexico for another few months, and we talked on the phone every day. And things really improved. And I started to see him with my new perspectacles. And I really appreciated the way that he always listens for my desires and tries to make them happen. And I really started noticing things changing for good when I joined Ridiculously Happy Wives later that spring. And we decided that we would move back in together for the summer. So I was in Ridiculously Happy Wives and I was moving back in with him. So it was like, I got this support system here and this is really going to help me, because in my mind, it was like a trial to see if these skills really worked on the day to day. It's one thing to be in phone calls and, you can kind of plan what you're going to say, but just in the day to day where you're bumping into each other in the kitchen and sharing a bathroom, that's a whole different life.
Yes.
So So I needed to see if it could work, on the day to day. And, he quit drinking altogether and our communication really improved.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait, wait, wait. He quit drinking altogether? Like,
Yeah.
just right
Yeah.
then?
Yeah. I mean, he had been gradually doing it, making these choices for himself. It was his journey too, to kind of go through what he wanted in his life. And this is something that he decided it was important for him to not have this interfere with our relationship. And so he
Oh,
made choices for himself that were really, really hard. And I really appreciated it. And I started to feel safe again. And it was amazing because when I relaxed into my feminine and allowed space for him to swoop in and handle things, he would. And, when I moved back in with him, it was his condo that I moved into. And so it was kind of easy for me to relinquish control of like the household stuff because it was his place. And so he did all the shopping, he did all the cooking, he did the finances. And I just said, thank you and whatever you think quite a bit. And I just was receiving a lot. And I expressed at least 3 gratitudes a day and said, I hear you if you had something to talk about. And I began to use empathy words with him, like, that sounds really hard, and stop trying to fix things or offer my helpful advice. I just stopped doing that. He'd have issues at work and I would just say, God, that sounds really hard. And I did tons of self-care. I had weekly massages. I took walks. I rode my bike. I did yoga, meditation. I visited my friends and I kept my commitment to God, and I found room for both of them in my life. That was able to work. Yeah.
amazing. And I love this little snapshot of your life right here where you're doing yoga, you're meditating, you're getting tons of self-care, seeing your friends, and you're receiving from him. You're kind of like a guest in his condo in a way. So he's doing everything, the shopping and everything, and you're just taking it all in. So like you're like the princess in this scenario, and it sounds like that really worked. That was like great for your relationship with him. Is that
It
is
was,
that right?
and I liked it so much. I'm keeping that going because that's really working for me, and it's really working for him too because he feels like such a provider and a hero, and he loves to cook and he loves to just take care of things, and I just get to flit around and do what I want to do. It's really nice.
Now, was this hard for you because you were a big doer, right? There was Easter eggs and pumpkin carvings and volunteering in classrooms. Like there was a lot. You were doing a lot of stuff. So was this hard to become just take such a receptive posture?
Yes. And it was I was large and in charge. And sometimes I find myself triggered by wanting to take over something, something in our life here. It's like, well, I know how to do this. I could do it. I can figure this out and I'll start in on it. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. For one thing, I'm robbing him of the opportunity to provide and to step up and be my hero. And for another thing, it's just a pain in the Oh, sorry. It's paying the behind. It's just like it's like, why do I want to take that on? That's just like a lot of work. I have other like fun things that I want to do now. And in the bad old days, I didn't have fun things I wanted to do. My life was all around all my obligations and things that I felt like I should do. But now I have this list of things that are waiting for me to do. I mean, a lot of them I do, but there's other things that I haven't even started yet that I want to do that are way more fun than, paying the taxes or whatever it is that I feel like I want to jump into. So yeah, I just prioritize my self-care over all that other stuff.
I mean, I love it. It sounds great. And it's so counterintuitive, right? That you, in some ways, like probably felt guilty about how little you were contributing. I don't know. Actually, I'm making that part up, but this actually, he loved it. He wanted to be your hero this whole time, and he got to be.
Yeah, and in fact, just recently I said, do you want me to cook sometimes? Because you're cooking all the time. He's like, no, I love it. I'm fine. I'll let you know if I want a break. If he wants a break, then he just takes me out to dinner and we go out a lot.
I I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. It must feel so good to. It sounds very tender too. Like he was like waiting for his chance to just take care of you.
He really was, and he really is. He really needs to take care of people and things. I mean, that was all. He ended up not being an actor all his whole career. He had like a regular job, and he was always taking care of people's needs in his job and take care of the kids. And I feel like he really needs that. And now he's a retired person, and so he needs that purpose as well. And so it's interesting because, he's really supportive of my busy days, and I find him adjusting his schedule to make himself available to spend time with me. And he's just like the support man behind me. He's like, okay, I know you've got this thing with Laura. I'll just make sure I'm gone during that time. And what time do you want dinner? When I come back, I'll make sure you have a nice dinner. And he's just orbiting around me and just taking care of everything that just kind of is needs to be done so I can just do what lights me up. And that he has said many times, that's what I want for you, is just to be happy and do the things that you love. And that's what makes me, when you're fully engaged with something that lights you up, then I'm happy. That's what he says.
Amazing. I love it. I love it. Who would have thought this would be the thing? I guess you hadn't tried. It was just being
Yeah,
ridiculously happy all the time.
it's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it feels really connected and really safe. And, he touches me all the time. He kisses me. He dances with me in the house. And we smile and we joke a lot. And, like I said, we're both retired and we live in Mexico. We have a really active, healthy lifestyle with friends and theater and cultural events. And he still golfs and I still do yoga, but we attend this church together that we both feel good about. And I'm in the best shape of my life. and I feel good. I'm at a great weight. I feel really strong and healthy, and I'm back to performing again in plays and musicals. And he's my biggest fan. He comes to all my shows and cheers and invites his friends, and it's really fun. Yeah, and he takes care of everything with the house, and we go out to dinner a lot. As I said, he hired me a housekeeper so I don't have to clean. And we sit on the roof and we drink coffee and we look at the sky together. And you're right. I'm a princess that gets to do fun things all day and focus on coaching other women from this filled up place. And it's just, life is really good. And I wouldn't have been able to experience this if I hadn't finally realized my part in what was going wrong. I would have just been alone. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's amazing. It's such a humble place to come from. Like the way you looked at this whole thing and the way you described the story, it like happened not just like that. Like you just went, "Oh, okay, this is my part. I think I'm going to take responsibility and do some experiments and say whatever you think and give some gratitude." Um, but I know that that's actually, I mean, there's such a hump to get over to think because you were so exhausted, you were so resentful, really, of his drinking and all the ways that he was hard to live with. So, I mean, how did you get yourself to be so accountable?
I think, I needed space away because I was just, like, so in the middle of it. It was just, like, consuming me, and I needed to do self-care and do some things for myself. Because when I went to Mexico, I decided that I wanted to take a lot of my skills, my theatrical skills, my meditation teacher training, my yoga teacher training, and my art affinity for art, and create these women's circles around that. And so I created these women's circles where they would come together and we would use all these modalities to let our creative intuition flow, and we would do art, and I was doing that in Mexico, and I was really inspired by it, and it filled me up, and I was felt like I was using all my creative talents to make this happen, and I was enlisting other women, and I was seeing them awaken in their own creativity and their own freedom. And it was just very empowering to me to see, like, this is my power, this is who I am, and this is, I have so much to give. And so I filled myself up with the self-care, and then it made me able to just be open and receptive to, like, new information about how I was showing up. And I guess I was so beaten down, I couldn't see past the pain before I got that break. And that really helped me.
That's like a little wisdom bomb right there, I think. Like this whole time of just getting filled up and being with those other women and doing all these things that fill you up and that you love puts you in a place to be able to be strong enough to be filled up enough to have that breakthrough with your
Mm,
accountability, which I just love. I think that sounds
mhm.
amazing. So,
Yeah.
and what about? I mean, what about that? Those divorce papers? Did that? Whatever happened with that? Like, did that? Did you call the lawyers and say never mind, or like it's off, or
Yeah. Yeah, we did. We called our lawyers and told them never mind. And we as time went by, we just realized that it was working, and that we wanted to be together, and that we always really did love each other, but we just didn't know how to fix it. And I finally found the key, and these skills were really working, and he was responding so well. I mean, he just loves gratitude, and he got just none. He got so many crumbs, and I just was such a terrible receiver back in the bad old days. And now he was getting all these thank yous and all this appreciation and all this respect, and it felt so good to him, and it felt good to me too, to show up in a dignified way. So we knew that we were going to be able to make this. And we've had some bumps along the way, but it's just, we belong together, and this is better than it's ever been, really. I mean, after 40 years, it's better than it's ever been. And, those days of raising kids and stuff are hard, and financial issues are hard. I mean, those middle years, those are the toughest years. You just really got to give each other grace, because it's really hard. Once you get to retirement, it's like that's the reward for all your hard work. And to give that up, to like divorce someone right at the beginning of like the best part seemed ridiculous too. It was like, wait a minute, this is the reward for all the scrimping and saving and all the things. It's like, let's enjoy our life now. So yeah, so we
Gosh.
called those attorneys and told them that we weren't gonna, and they're like, well, we'll just leave the paperwork handy, just in case you change your mind. I'm like, we're not gonna change our mind. We are.
You were sure. You're like, "Nope, this is not happening." So that's
Yeah.
awesome. So and then, so, I mean, does it ever come up again? I mean, no marriage is perfect, right? Are there ever, uh, like you had that big fight, right? Has that ever happened again or little fights even?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've had some little fights along the way. And my biggest challenge, I think, is trying to convince him to do fun things with me that I think that he would really enjoy that aren't really his thing. And I'm like, oh, we should go hiking up this steep mountain up to the top. There's a waterfall up there. And he's just like, are you crazy? I don't want to do that. And so he's learned that it's okay and it's safe for him to say no to me without suffering the retribution of me giving him the cold shoulder for a week and a half or being on his case or yelling at him or trying to convince him. I can just say, okay, that's cool if you don't want to go, and just let it be and really be okay with it and not just say, yeah, that's cool, but hold it against him. And so that is my challenge, to just put the duct tape on and just go, okay, if he doesn't want to take the walk or he doesn't want to do the class or he doesn't want to, whatever it is, it's just like, that's cool. And I really am okay with it. And I don't give him any grief about it. And he's able to say no now. And I tell him, I want you to be able to say no and just stand your own ground. Because what happened in the past, like I said, that wash, rinse, repeat cycle, he would go along and then he would resent me. And I didn't want that. And so I'm just like, I'd rather you just be honest and say, no, you're not interested. And then I just have to deal with that. And I'm okay because I want you to be happy. So that's the biggest struggle for me, is because I get all excited about things and I like to be busy. He doesn't like to be as busy as I do.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And it sounds like kind of a miracle that you go from being able like that was quite the cycle to break from having him say no in the past and you just kind of pushing through, right? And just saying like, I know you said no, but actually you mean yes, and we're doing this, to becoming a person where it's safe for him to say no and there's not going to be you're not going to punish him on the other side, it sounds like,
Mm.
for
Yeah.
saying his no.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
because
pretty
we've
cool.
created this emotional safety between us now, so he feels like it's okay for him to really share how he feels and not worry about the retribution. But, like the other day, just like two nights ago, he was cooking a pork loin and he had it in the oven and he had these potatoes that were going to go with it, and they were sitting on the counter still. They weren't in the oven. And he was in the other room and he was reading a book, and I saw the potatoes sitting there and I knew the pork loin was in the oven, and I knew what time he said dinner was going to be ready. And so I'm like, did you forget the potatoes that were? And he goes, no, honey, I got it. Don't worry. I got it all under control. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. That was like, I'm totally on your paper. I am so sorry. You got it handled. You always come through. I just zip. So yeah, sometimes I'll just micromanage a little bit, but he he can roll with it because I don't do it all the time, and I immediately catch myself too and apologize. So it's just easier to navigate.
I mean, I think that's amazing. Like, that's such a small thing. You could have been like, "Well, how was I gonna know? I mean, I knew, I saw them sitting there." So, um, has he ever acknowledged this big transformation in you that you went from thinking it was all his fault to really taking so much responsibility yourself?
Well, he feels like it's that we both made our changes in our life, that we both did the work that needed to be done in order to come to this agreement, to come to this peaceful place, because he did do the work of quitting drinking, which is a huge deal. And that is a big thing. And he's also done a lot of, soul searching on his own. But, you know, I when I think about, I'll quiz him a little bit about like, well, when you when I respond to you in a way where you ask me if I want to do something with the car. I think I want to do something with the car, and I say, well, um, how much is it going to cost? Well, where are you going to have that done? Well, why do you think that needs to be done? Well, and when I question you like that, how does that make you feel? And he goes, like you're all over me, and that, you don't respect me, you don't trust me. I said, and when I say, sure, hon, whatever you think, how does that make you feel? He's like, it makes me feel like you trust me and you respect me. And, I said, what difference has that made in our marriage? He goes, it's made a ton of difference. So indirectly, through my quizzing, I've I've realized that,
So good.
he acknowledges not, I mean, like I've heard podcasts and stories, from other women that, their husband just goes, "Oh, honey, thank you for saving our marriage." And, I haven't gotten that acknowledgement yet, but I know that he realizes that things have changed and things are better, and he's happy about it, and he doesn't want to go down the road of analyzing how it became that way, but he's sure glad that it's the way it is now, and he's much
Yeah,
happier.
I think that's awesome. I want to touch on this piece about him quitting drinking for a second, because I think that's something that so many women wish their husbands would do, and yours did. So it's kind of
Uh,
interesting, right? Like, do you
uh,
feel like your journey, the transformation that you've been through, had anything to do with that?
I do, because I felt like, although, there's alcoholism in his family tree and there's alcoholism in mine, and, he's had alcohol in his life ever since he was 14 years old, and so it's not like, he hasn't, uh, been drinking, even before he met me. But the pressure of, the way I was treating him was really hard on him, and he wasn't sure how to cope with it. And he didn't know how to say no, and he didn't know how to stand up for himself, and in an adaptive way. And so by me changing my approach to him and offering him a soft place to land, he was able to face his own demons and let go of that crutch that he had. Yeah, yeah.
So exciting, right? So empowering. You sound
Yeah,
very empowered, Kathleen.
I'm
You
really
do.
proud of him. Yeah, because it's a lot. It's made a huge difference, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. So, if you were gonna give a tip to somebody who is where you were, maybe they're separated, they've had that horrible fight and spent 7 hours on a silent car ride, and or she just thinks, "I've tried everything. I have tried everything already. There's nothing left to try."
Mhm.
And she wants what you have now, where she's the princess and he always cooks for her unless he wants a break, and then he takes her out, and you do all these fun things together, and like you just feel so taken care of, and like this is the fun part. This is the fun part of marriage now, and she wants
Yeah.
to be in the fun part where you are. What's your tip for her? What should she do?
Man, you know, as a coach, I would never give her advice, of course, but if I was to give her advice, I would say practice these skills early and often, and that self-care is the foundation of all these skills, and just prioritize your needs. To become an expert on asking yourself what you need right now, and then give it to yourself, and don't make it someone else's job. Don't allow yourself to feel guilty for taking care of yourself. And, it's okay not to be superwoman, and your value is not in your productivity. It's in the way you connect with the people in your life. And say no, and ask for help before you're drowning, and never make it a complaint. What I also would tell her is to focus on the good, and that gratitudes are your go-to, and to remember what you loved about him in the beginning, because respect for a man is like oxygen. And you need to show him that you trust him and forgive him when he messes up. Because the last thing he wants to see is disappointment in your eyes. He wants to look into he wants you to look into his eyes with pride and adoration, and do believe that he only wants you to be happy. It might not seem that way sometimes, but he really does. And Laura, I want to tell you just a short little story that helps to reinforce this message, because recently I went through some home videos. And in this one, my husband was the cub master. So my son was pretty young. He was maybe 8 years old or something. And the cubs were graduating up to scouts. They were, moving up. And my husband was leading the meeting because he was the cub master. But there was a part in the meeting where the parents had to stand with their kids to receive a pin from their boy, thanking them for all the support that they had given him. And I was standing with our son because my husband was running the meeting, and I had someone else videotaping me. And in that videotape, I was looking at my husband with pride and adoration in that meeting. And when it came time for the pinning, I waved him over and I said, "This is for you." And I had my son pin the pin onto my husband because it was for him. It wasn't for me, because he deserved it. He was the cub master. And it was this little thing, but the video showed me the love on my face that I had forgotten that I felt, because in the bad old days, I was so focused on the negative that I painted it with this brush of like it's all bad. But there were so many good moments, and I did love him and I adored him, and it showed in that video. And we had a lot of good years and memories and love between us. And I'm just really grateful to have found my way back.
So beautiful. That is such a tender story. I love it. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you, yeah, like this is a great treasure that you have found through this journey. And I really feel that when you tell that Cub
Mhm.
Scout story. Beautiful. Yeah. It doesn't sound like your values are too different anymore.
They really aren't. No, they really aren't. We're very much aligned in a lot of ways. On politics, of course, that's a different story, but 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 in a lot of other ways, the most important ways, we are very aligned. Yeah.
What would you
Yeah.
say to Kathleen if you could go back in time and tell her what you know now?
Hmm. Kathleen, silly girl. Well, I tell you, I would tell her that, you know, I'm I'm a different I'm a different wife and a woman because of these skills. And she was just doing the best that she could, and they were just patterns that she learned, and they can be changed, and I know how to change them. And so take my hand and come with me and let me teach you, Kathleen. It's going to be okay. Yeah. Yeah, she just was trying so hard, but she just was going in the wrong direction. Yeah.
I love your compassion that
Yeah.
comes through in that.
Oh,
Yeah, beautiful. And I know your children are grown, but
mhm.
their parents are not divorced. Your son cried and cried. So
Oh,
how has this impacted them?
oh,
Oh, sorry.
well, yeah, my kids are adults, and I have issued a Laura Doyle apology to both of them at the same time. Together, we had a family meeting, and I apologize for all of my controlling behavior while they were growing up, and setting those bars for them to reach. And I feel like that really helped to clear up my side of the street. And my daughter and I were finding our way, and she felt safe enough to tell me that all my crazy diets and eating plans affected her body image. And I have to accept my role in that. And I hope she can continue to feel safe enough to keep sharing her feelings with me. And I'm trying to cultivate that emotional safety in our relationship. And my son, he's inspired by me and my transformation. And I have this little card that I keep on my desk that he gave me um at my birthday in 2025, and I'd love to read it to you. It's short.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. I would love
he,
it.
he says, "Happy birthday. I'm so glad you are my mom. I'm very grateful for the relationship we've cultivated, and especially for how it has developed in the last few years. I feel lucky to be able to talk with you honestly, to go to you for guidance, and share my struggles and successes with you. Thank you for being so willing to grow, learn, and listen. I admire those traits in you, and I hope to emulate them as I grow older. Love, your son. Yeah. He's 28 years old. Yeah.
That must have melted you, Kathleen.
Did.
It's
That's why I
melting
came
me.
here.
Brings
Yeah, I
tears to
came
my eyes.
here. It's to inspire me and inspire me when I'm talking to clients and just, if I'm ever feeling low about how I'm showing up, I know that I'm making progress every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, congratulations. I want to give you my Best Wife Award. Here it is. And such an inspiring thing that you've done to fix your marriage and all the ways that it's affected your whole family. Like this happy birthday card from your 28-year-old son. It sounds like you have wonderful intimacy and connection with your whole family. And I know this takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of commitment to get from where you were to where you are. So, Kathleen, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate that. It's just with these skills, we've really uncovered the beauty of this enduring bond between us. It's something we've taken stock of our beliefs and our behaviors and we've changed them. And we decided that intimacy is more important than being right or getting our way. And we felt that pain of the separation. And these skills have just enabled me to show up with dignity and respect, and for him to emerge as my hero, which he is. And last summer, I wanted to share with you that last summer in July, we celebrated in the presence of our family. We celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary. Mm. And we renewed our vows in the same park where we got married 40 years ago with our same maid of honor and our same best man, and our
Oh,
children were there, and it was really beautiful. Yeah.
Kathleen, amazing. What an accomplishment. Not everybody
Yeah.
gets to say that they make it to their 40th wedding anniversary and renews their vows and has all the same characters there. I just admire it so much. What a great thing that you've done.
Yeah, it's definitely a 2.0 relationship too. It's just better than ever. I wish I had more years of this version, but we'll make the best of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think you're having an effect on listeners today and helping them have more years of a happy marriage too with
Yeah.
these inspiring stories that you've shared with us. And I can't thank you enough. It's been a delight to get to hear.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura. I really appreciate how you've inspired me. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kathleen. This has
Hmm.
been great. All right, your Try It Tonight takeaway is receiving graciously. And I know this one can feel a little uncomfortable. It definitely did for me at first. Okay, remember when Kathleen was doing everything? She was running the house, planning the holidays, managing kids, making all the decisions, basically being the CEO of the family. Well, that sounded exhausting, and it wasn't exactly the recipe for romance either. But then something shifted. She moved into her husband's condo, and instead of stepping back into that CEO role, Kathleen did something radical. She became a guest. She let him handle the finances, the shopping, the cooking, and the household responsibilities. And did you hear what happened? She enjoyed just receiving from him, and their relationship flourished. She was happy, and so was he. Kind of shocking, right? Today, she feels like a princess, cared for, supported, and free to do what excites her. And it started with receiving graciously everything that her husband was offering. So, all you have to do to try this is lean back a little or a lot and let yourself receive, receive, receive. If you want to try this experiment alongside thousands of other women this week, including my certified relationship coaches, come join us in the Adored Wife community at adoredwife.com. Now, this takes some courage to do, right? But you can do it tonight. Are you ready to try receiving graciously? All right, then go, go, go.